Hey everyone, it's Stephen Glicker here, and it's time to roll for combat. The goofy intro, but we're gonna see if it works. We're sticking.
Just the way you mock it and the way you say it is what makes the intro.
It makes it fun because I make fun of my own intro, much like I make fun of Derek.
Yes. It is.
And you make fun of me. You make fun of everything in this.
That's true. Yeah, I mean that's like somebody was commenting on something I said, and I was like about criticizing something I said, and I said no, that's absolutely right. That is exactly right. I do kind of shit on everything. Like that's just my thing. Like I the things I love, I crap on them. The things I don't love, I kind of crap on them. So it's like that's just who I am.
Well, this is interesting. Won't even go into news. I don't even know if there was news. I'll tell you real quick news is that super quick news is that Diamond was sold, and here's the good/bad news. Bad news is Diamond, who distributes books for myself and Paizo and Goodman Games and lots of other people. They're a big comic distributor as well as book distributor. They went bankrupt. They had a very, very long, crazy legal battle getting sold. They were sold, and then I got an email saying we were sold and half of the people you work with were all fired. And I was like, wow, that sucks. So I don't even know. Okay, I guess that's good that they were sold, because if them going bankrupt would mean I would have lost all my books and the money they owe me and everything. But I was like, okay, I guess I'll find out who I'm working with now, because I don't even know who I'm working with anymore. So
Seems like a crazy system. I'm glad I don't own a business. Hey, I'm going to give you all my product that I paid for, and then hope that you sell it and give me money back eventually. But if you somehow go bankrupt, I won't. So I guess.
Oh, whoops! I was using the wrong mic. This stupid computer. I have like 15 mics. It always changes them.
So nobody could hear you this whole
No,
time?
they heard me. It felt like I was like
distant.
I don't know. Yeah, I was distant. Sorry,
which is
everyone.
weird. Well, that's the problem. Is that we could hear you just fine. So.
We could
I know,
hear you,
well,
but you
because
did sound
I
better
know,
yesterday.
I
know.
When
If you were a professional streamer like me, you would check your OBS levels
did.
before you would go live.
I did. It was working. The problem is that the mic was a different mic, so it showed that it was working. But people are like, "Oh, you're using the wrong mic." But
hey,
whatever.
I have multiple mics, and I don't seem to have a problem with that.
Because you're you literally are professional. Because
see, I can change over to this mic at the push of a button.
Well, so can I. I just changed over. Look at this. I have a new mic. Look at this.
Oh.
I have a new headset. I don't know if this mic's
crown
good.
thing new, where people are having crowns next to their
no
face?
That is new.
That is
that is the first, second, and third people who comment. So once you comment, I think
or post,
I don't know what
chat.
that is.
No,
well, no, because
it's
it can't
a number
be
of
because
comments.
Marquis posted.
No,
the
it's a
third
number of
comment,
comments.
and-
No, because the Hollow's number one because they chatted first, and then Jonas is number two because he.
Yeah, but Marquis did not get number 3, even though Marquis chatted right after Jonas. Valathor got number 3.
Well, I don't know. I don't know. Basically, it looks like if you are the number 1, 2, and 3 commenters, you get that.
Okay.
I don't know how that works. I don't know if anyone knows.
Is that a?
Oh yeah. Maybe it's by amount.
So here's what we're going to talk about. Now, Derek, I doing the stream because you had 200 people going on your stream yesterday. I thought to myself,
that is not correct.
That is the most people Derek's ever had.
That is not correct. I had I had 375.
You had 375. That was insane. And I'm like, wow, if Derek is getting 375, then I got to copy him. What?
For 6 hours.
I know, for 6.5 hours. And here is Daggerheart, which I got in the mail for free, unlike you, Derek, because Darrington Press likes me, and they don't like
I'm
you.
supposedly getting it in the mail, although I don't know when.
Well, you know what? I'm getting it in the mail too.
Oh, but you paid for it.
But you paid for it.
Because I pre-ordered it a couple months ago.
Well, they reached out and said, hey, guys, because we're friendly with them. And they're like, you want some? And I went, yes, please. And then they sent me some. So it got the cards.
You think they got that in before the tariffs?
Oh yeah, actually they did
for sure.
Oh, 100% because I was playing in a gamma. I saw it at
okay.
gamma. Yeah, oh yeah, no, I know for a fact they did.
Now the question is not that, but whether or not they rushed it when they heard about the tariff to make sure.
Right?
No.
They hired a bunch of private 747s and flew it over. Like,
no, that's what
Apple,
Microsoft does.
or Apple did. I
everyone
thought
does.
Apple did it. Maybe.
So
Apple does
Mark
it too.
T sent a super chat
They'll
and said
do.
Derek already did 6 hours of Daggerheart and 375. Amazing.
I know. So where my 375? How's that possible,
Well,
Derek?
Well, yesterday was the release day. Today, it's
Yeah, this is not the big release party day. It's the day after.
Not that many people did, but if you did stick around to the very end,
I did.
the last 45 minutes, they basically said, I said, so what does all this mean? And I said, nothing. It's what I was like, I like the game, which is probably a very
No,
bad
that's what you
sign
said. You
for-
said
for
what
its-
it means
for its
is you
future-
like the game, which means it's going to fail.
You're right. If I like the game, it's probably a bad sign for its future financial viability.
That's not. But Derek, you liked Pathfinder 2.
That is true.
It had
but
it had enough financial viability. Obviously, it's not D&D, but none of these games is trying to be D&D.
that is true. And I mean, the premise of my stream was, is this a heartbreaker or a game changer? And I think it's a little bit of both. And the reason why I say it's a little bit of both is because it actually isn't a game changer. If if anything, and a lot of people, which warmed the cockles of my heart, a lot of people said, Derek they were listing the list of inspiration, and Derek was pulling all these titles off of his, shelf, and I was like, and I recognize all the, like, because of Night's Last Call, I knew these games. I've bought these games, or I've watched these games, I've learned about these games. But if you have spent any amount of time outside of the D&D sphere, then a lot of the stuff in this book is not game changing. It's PBTA kind of 101.
Well,
But
yeah,
that is not something that most people are experienced with.
well, that's
And
the thing.
so
yeah,
if this gets that to a wider audience and sort of introduces these more, dare I say, narrative forward mechanics or narrative forward ideas of running a game, then and collaborative, and I know a lot of RPGs talk about that. That's true. But this is really putting it front and center.
And getting to the audience, that's what could be game changing.
Correct. That's the part that could be, yes. That's the part that could be game changing.
Pretty much almost nobody ever game changes something that no other designer has ever gotten on their itch.io page that 10 people have downloaded, something that it was just like the most amazing game mechanic ever made, but nobody's ever heard about. So sometimes a game changer is a game changer purely because of how much it changes the zeitgeist or the wider audience, I think.
All right, so I'm going to give, so I read through the rules, then I played it at Gamma, and I'm going to give my overview, and then we'll go into details. And then if you guys want to do your overview, let me do mine first. Sound
Okay.
good? My overview is fascinating. I read this book, and I haven't seen a book like this before, I think, because it is very interesting. First of all, the rules probably only take up like 15 to 20% of the book. There's a lot of information in here on like how to run a game. And there's a great section that shows you how to even run a long-term campaign that shows you like act structure. And I'm like, holy crap, like this is gold. Like some of the stuff in here was really good. I was like, this is a really interesting book because it's talking to people who both are brand new to gaming as well as people who have played games. And there was still information in here that I think that experienced gamers can play. But as for the game itself, man, this thing feels like the marriage of 4th edition and Gloomhaven. It feels like a board game turned into a role-playing game, which
is all role-playing games.
I know, but this one really is because like they used between the card system and I used it myself, the actual I can show that page. They don't want us to show full pages. It's like they'll send us the stuff for free, but they don't want us to show full pages. But I'll show these pages. The character sheet pages with the cards.
I mean, it's an SRD.
Yeah, but the thing.
Yeah, the character sheets I think are okay because they're like
I'm flipping there real quick. Okay,
but
so
they did say don't send the full pages of the book.
With these pages, what they do is they actually, when you do it in real life, there's actually the page itself, but then there's a side page, and you put the side page underneath and you slide it out, and it shows you with little arrows saying what everything is. And I know this was like in the playtest and stuff, but I was just like, okay, one of those, why didn't someone think of this earlier? Because I sat down to play for the first time at Gamma, and just by looking at the sidebar sheet, like with the little arrow showing you exactly what everything is, I knew exactly what to do. And I'm like, okay, this is what a board game would do, you know? And it was like very intuitive. And then the whole thing with like the cards representing your powers, and that, you know, fighters kind of feel like spellcasters, which is very fourth edition, which actually I liked. But I'll be honest, if I was to design a TTRPG, I think this might be the one I would design, because it's like very structured, it's very organized, it's very modular in all of the mechanics of the actual characters. There's even like little checkboxes on when you level up and what you get, which again is very like Gloomhaven like it's like, okay, these are literally what you can get. It's not a huge list, but you check them off as you level up. But then it's also a little weird because the rest of the rules are incredibly nebulous. So it has this weird mixture of very, very strict gameplay mechanics for the characters and the monsters and the dice, but then everything else is really loosey-goosey, which is fascinating. I don't know if it's good or it's bad, but I feel like there's a strong engine here. Obviously, I'll get to my issues later, but there are some issues.
Sure. Well, I mean, the strong engine is essentially at the core D&D. I mean, it's you know, roll a number on a random dice roll and add a bonus, and did you beat the DC? I mean, you know, in that respect.
Oh, here's the side. Here's the character sheet.
But is
sidebar.
that D&D only?
Sidebar.
Like, I think there are other games where you roll a number to.
Yeah, but that was the first game that did it. I mean, you know what I mean, in terms of like roll the number, roll high, get it versus DC. I mean, when I think of that, I really do think of like third.
I don't know. Original D&D, you were sometimes trying to hit under a number,
sure,
right?
But yeah.
And there were other games that were contemporaries where you were trying to hit over. So
yeah,
I see what you're saying, but I'm not really sure that I would call any game where you roll and add
when
something.
Most people think of the core roll of D&D, it is the attack roll, it is rolling a D20, it is adding your bonus and trying to, you know, roll high.
Sure, but it's not rolling 2d12.
Yes,
one of which is going to give you a partial success versus a better success.
That's the change up. Right.
Yeah.
That's the change up. You know, and like I said, I think it has a lot to do with, you know, this game and trying to get, you know, as I say, try to get more, you know, juice out of the squeeze out of a die roll. Like, how can we make this die roll do more work for us? I mean, by the way, you could just as easily do this with a D20 and just say, if it's even, it's with hope. If it's odd, it's with fear. I mean, basically, I mean, you get to kind of the same place, more or less. But yeah, I mean, they decided to go with the 2D12, which is fine. I wonder what that does. Like, well, this is getting too nitty gritty, but it's like it does create this interesting thing where now you have a bell curve distribution to your roll.
Yeah, no, they did that on purpose. They said in the rules they wanted the players to have a bell curve and the GM to be really random.
Which obviously, for those of you who don't necessarily know that, but it just means that there's a lot more volatility in the GM's rolls and a lot more consistency in the players' rolls. The players are very unlikely to roll extremely high, but they're also very unlikely to roll extremely low. So
yeah, it was. I don't know, when I played it, I liked it. There's another interesting
thing too. That you might consider, which is that among the rolls that you can get that are like really bad, a decently high percentage of them are actually critical hits.
Right.
So your actual average is better than you think.
Yeah, you're
because
right.
of the since 2d12 can produce between 2 and 24, but 2 out of, I think, 6, so 1/3 of the results that produce between a 2 and a 4, including all of the results that produce a 2, are actually a critical success regardless of what you rolled. And so therefore, it actually means that the lowest you can get on the 2d12 is 3, and that even then, if you get a 4, you have an okay chance that it was a crit instead.
So the other thing I liked.
And there's no critical.
First, I hated this, but they're gold because it goes from handful to bags to chest. But then I realized it's really nothing more than
it's silver,
copper,
to gold,
silver,
to platinum.
Gold. Yeah,
it's copper, silver, gold, or silver, gold, platinum, because they said you can do a coin separately if you want, but we mostly ignore it. But it's so that you feel like the numbers are more abstract.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they would have just started with a coin.
Well, that's the weird thing. It's like they have a lot of numbers in here, but then they get abstract with. Like, there's so much detail on the characters and how they work, But then the world and like how treasure works, just give it out. I'm like, it's like, it seems like there's always.
I was shocked that treasure was in the game. And apparently, according to my chat, they were like, it's because Laura Bailey likes gold. And I was like,
no, you need,
really?
And
like,
but you need,
that's the reason?
Because no,
Laura
you need
Bailey,
an economy though. I don't know. Like,
no, you don't.
Yes, you do. If you want this game to last, you do. You definitely do.
You know, I mean, you know, it's just, it's like oh, so the game. Oh, it's like Blades in the Dark. In the Blades in the Dark, you have this very abstract concept called just coin, and it's like you can have between 1 to 4 coin on you, but it's not like actually literally a coin. It's just an abstract hand wavy thing. It doesn't really matter. And here's the thing, though: the game that Daggerheart is trying to present is not, you know, the mercenary characters in the dungeon. I mean, it does talk about you going into a dungeon to face the apocalyptic evil and prevent the dark Ragnaros from overroaming. No, you know, like these aren't characters who are just going to, you know, just pick everything up.
So yeah, Jordan, the PH is silent, asked, "How much can we show?" We can show everything. It's public.
We were asked
we're not allowed to
specific
show
pages.
Yeah, they said not to show full pages.
We can preview anything without showing it.
Well, I can go to any page.
And Derek can show anything because he is not a press person. He bought his.
Well, Derek also breaks the rules, so he just showed like.
Yeah, Steven, I break the rules.
You did. You were. I mean, Derek is a big rule breaker. Let me tell you, Derek is still traumatized by that.
Still traumatized
so
for spending a weekend
for this. That even in like a community that wasn't about Pathfinder, I saw some people being like, "I wonder why Darrington Press has this rule about showing off all the pages. That's kind of weird."
Everyone
and then
does.
Somebody was like, "Well, I heard that in Pathfinder there was one guy who showed like all the pages, and so now
That's
a lot of companies are making this rule."
Yeah, that's
so
true.
someone speculated. They didn't name you by name. They may not have even known it was you.
But now, someone showed all the pages, and then they made a PDF off of that. Derek.
I didn't show all the pages.
It doesn't matter. You know, they pieced it together.
No, so here's the thing. I actually addressed this last night. I did not show any of the classes. I did not show any of the ancestries, and I think I showed one. I think I showed one page of the powers. So my whole thing was like, I just want to cover the rules texts, and I want to cover some of the stuff they talk about, like with the, you know, some of their advice for GMing.
And Jordan, with the PH, just said, as someone who showed too many D&D 2024 pages and almost had their channel shut down.
You see, Jordan,
he knows all about that. Like
that's why you have to take my tactic of being small, meaningless, and irrelevant to the powers that be.
No, you don't understand, Derek. Those mercenary lawyers that WoTC had would have been happy to shut down a small, meaningless channel.
Yes, they would love.
They would their book at that one time they were employing those guys.
You're like a minnow.
Dr. Metropolis says I did show some restraint last night.
There you go.
But also, I mean, no one sent me anything for free. I bought it with my own freaking hard-earned money. So.
Yeah, they didn't have any rule for that for Derek. But I want to go back to what Steven was saying before, because Steven's overview was very interesting. I think Derek could easily tell too that it revealed what kind of games Steven like hasn't played, because he compared a lot of things to Gloomhaven that were like flat out in many RPGs that came out before Gloomhaven and were on the list of inspirations. I would also say I would challenge the idea that only 15% of the pages are game rules or game stats.
30%.
It's like over half.
Okay, half. But my point is, it's not the whole
because
book.
of the fact that the monster stat blocks, the environment stat blocks, the classes, and all of those other things do take a lot of space. If you're talking about the running the game rules, those are always really short. Like people say Pathfinder 2, for example, has
but they're not short in this
to learn
book.
If you want to learn how to play the game. But actually, that section is very short if you don't read the ancestry background and class section.
I think Steven is right, because, you know, compared to most of the games that, you know, Steven's running or is used to looking at because of you guys producing for PF2 or 5e, there's no lists of feats, right? There's no huge lists of spells. Right? There's no huge list of conditions. There's no huge, you know, list of minutia about area effect templates. You know, all that stuff that we're kind of used to being there and taking up a lot of rules real estate is not in this book.
And the monsters stat blocks are very small. Like,
Oh, sure, but there's still over 50 pages of them.
Okay, fair enough.
And there's also 50 pages of index at the end that are like rules cards for.
Yeah, okay, but the point is like they fit every single thing that you need for a feat or an ability on one card.
To be fair, you could do that with most Pathfinder 2 stuff too.
As someone who's I disagree.
I know that they did it because
strongly disagree. No, because a lot of those are on more than one card.
No, a handful of spells. A handful, a small.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If even one does, then you start breaking the. It becomes a pain. Trust me, as someone who has to do this and make things fit all day long.
I'm just saying we basically for years we basically played Pathfinder 2, all of our spellcasters off of the PF2 spell cards, from focus spells to cantrips to slots, and it was pretty
I know,
simple.
But this they actually have it fitting with it's like a magic card. It's like most of the card, I just put them away. Most of the card is graphic. Right, like those spell cards were all
most of the card is text.
Okay, but also, to be completely fair, they designed this game knowing that they wanted to put the bulk of the rules text onto a card.
Yeah, I know.
And they used the graphic design to save a large number of words that would have been in the Pathfinder rules by creating icons for them.
I'm not saying like the stress cost and to refresh or whatever, the swap.
I'm also saying not that other games don't do this and have rules like this. This is a mainstream game that is trying to go after the same crowd that D&D.
Is it mainstream?
Oh my God!
It seems like it would like to be mainstream.
It wants to be, and it's trying hard as hell. I don't think you understand. Okay, yesterday, YouTube put out a list of the top 100. YouTube now puts out a list of the top 100 podcasts in the United States. Okay.
Yeah.
100. Now, the top 100, that is, how many podcasts are there? A billion? Whatever. And Critical Role is on the top 100 of all the United States. So, and I didn't see any others. There wasn't D&D on there or anyone else. In fact, that was the only gaming. That was not just Critical Role was on there. I think it was like 89. It's the only gaming podcast in the top 100. Sure. Okay, all the others, a lot of them were political. Some of them were like, parenting and stuff, most political.
Sure.
So, yes, they're huge. I mean, I don't think you understand how big Critical Role is.
So, Steven, what you're saying leans into a super chat, so I just want to do it while it's super relevant. Then we'll move on to Derek. Smendon said, for this to succeed, Critical Role needs to promote Daggerheart to the moon. Their next campaign has to be using the system, or people will think they have no faith in it. That was the super chat. Sorry, go ahead, Derek. It was just really close to what Steve said.
No. Spendon was talking. This is what we were discussing at the end, because I said I don't really keep up with the critter sphere. And I said, and I know we had talked about it on this channel previously, which was, what are they going to do for campaign 4? And I don't mean some, 5-shot with a Bria or I mean like Matt Mercer and the gang sitting down to do a full length, Vox Machina, Mighty 9 level campaign with all the trimmings and the graphics and the time to Daggerheart, some sort of intro song or something like that. Are they going to do that for this? And I wonder if this is like, and then someone said, well, they're doing like a 6-shot, but they haven't really committed to it. And I was like, okay. So they want to test the waters and see, does anybody actually want to watch this? Do they like us, or do they just like D&D and we just happen to be the best at doing it?
So that's been our prediction every time this topic came up when the tea leaves were coming up, Derek, is that the obvious payoff for committing to Daggerheart and having a success is monumental and just like completely could be a game changer for the market. Yes, not for design, like you said before, but the risk is also high that if they go all in and then they lose everybody because, exactly like you said, maybe they really wanted D&D. So there's got to be elements in any time there's a group decision. There would be elements of like the sort of, let's take the risk. We might get the awesome payoff versus the risk averse. We're already at near the top of the mountain. If we rest on our laurels, we'll still be doing pretty well, but we are up for a precipitous fall. And so I'm sure you have factions like within any organization that are pushing in both directions.
Sure. I mean, the more the more star systems you try to grasp in your clan, right? The more will slip through your fingers.
That's right.
So here's the big issue with this game and everything you're saying. See, I always look at these because you were talking about MMOs last night, Derek, and
I talked for 6.5 hours. I talked about everything at
you
some
talking
point.
about everything. You literally talking about everything last night. At one point, he was talking about Unami. I don't know how that came in, but he was.
Well, after the 6th hour, it was like when Fry drank all the coffees on Futurama, and that 1 second he just reached enlightenment and saved everyone from the fire, and that's what happened.
The funny thing is, I watched almost the whole thing, which is
Wow.
which is worse. And then Derek and I were. And then we were talking after his chat. After 1 a.m, he and I were talking.
6.5 hours. Like, if you put Derek's video up for a child from the beginning of their school day to the end, they could just watch Derek and learn about Daggerheart instead of all of their subjects.
I was cranking on some monster parts while Derek was streaming. So, and then afterwards we cranked on some more monster parts.
That's right.
Derek was done streaming.
That's right.
So when an MMO comes out, it's like it is so gargantuan that you think you're done, but you're never done, and that's what people don't seem to understand. It's like with D&D and Pathfinder, and Pathfinder I feel actually does it way better than D&D. It's like, okay, there's the rules, but then you have to do the monsters, and then you have to do all the support classes and support systems and supporting the world, and then you have to come out with the adventures, and it just never ends. It's like you constantly have to be breathing life into this thing forever. And I feel like so many of these games, because it is such a massive lift, they come out with the rules and then they're like, okay, we're done. It's like, no. That is like, dude, that's like you finished 5%. Okay, you're literally 5% there. You still have to come out. Where are the adventures? Like, where is all the support material for this? And I'm kind of stunned they didn't come out with anything else.
Shock. I mean, you got to give them some credit. The day their game released, they also dropped the two new playtest classes.
Yeah, no, the playtest classes look pretty cool, and it has full graphics, and I give them that.
You know, and I also think that there's something to be said and about saying, hey, here's a core experience that hits most of the fantasy tropes without creating too many. Like, for example, apparently the one new class, Warlock, actually benefits from when you roll with fear. Right. Mm-hmm. So it's like, it's kind of like a Faustian bargain where you're, giving the GM fear, but that also powers your dark abilities. That's a little bit more of a complex, little bit more of a, moving parts and missing system. Maybe it's a good thing that they didn't put that in the core system. I think there's a lot of expansion that they could do. I mean, they could
there's a lot, but
I could do a ton of monsters.
Look at their campaigns in Chapter 5. There are some with like huge changes, and they've shown that you can graft a lot onto their system.
No, you can graft a lot, but I'm just surprised they didn't release even a small book of adventures, like something.
Well, you have the campaign frames in the back.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Chapter but those 5. Aren't. I know those are just frameworks. Those are not adventures. Those are just frameworks.
I mean, you had John Harper, you had McGay Baker, you had Felix Isaacs in the supporting author list. It depends on how much they really want to buy into this, because PBTA principle would say you don't create published adventures.
That's right.
PBTA principle says you outline fronts, or you outline threats, you outline clocks or countdowns or whatever they call them. You have these arcs, and then you play to find out what happens. Right.
In fact, in the introduction of the book, it says not to prepare a published adventure or something like that in advance, but instead to find out during play what's going to happen. So
is bullshit. And I know that I won't go into reasons, but I know that for a fucking fact.
That is your,
not my opinion. I know that
is your style, and you have a perfectly valid style that is shared by a significant number of players.
Right.
But it is also skewed by a significant number of players. So
no. I'm not talking about play style. I'm talking about marketing and how you want to present your game to the world. And if you're presenting the game to the world that here's a book and you guys just go crazy with it, that is leaving out. That's like saying, I don't know, trying to do an analogy. All right, yeah, we want to be, they want to be like P.F. Chang's. It's like, well, it's Chinese food, but it's Chinese food for everybody, but they're just trying to be something for everyone, but then they don't give.
I don't think, but maybe they're not.
They're not though.
No,
You know,
yes,
and in
they
fact-
are.
well,
They
no,
want
in
to be
fact-
huge.
And in fact, one of the things I said
I
actually last
disagree.
night is I said I've run a lot of PBTA games, and I've seen a lot of other people run PBTA games, and I think PBTA games or PBTA style games, you know, the low no prep, you know, collaborative, we're all riffing. I said it can have an extremely high ceiling, but it has an extremely low floor, and it's very easy for sessions to go badly. And I said last night, I'm not trying to be like gatekeepy, but this style of play requires, I think, a certain amount of not just player but GM skill, and I find it difficult to believe that people could pick this game up and having never run games before and run it.
Exactly. And that's my point, is that they go through this is you literally are making my point for me.
Okay.
Throughout the rules,
Well,
they're
then
going through.
we agree, apparently.
No, but they go throughout the rules to explain how to play the game and what a game is and like ways to play it. And it feels like it's very handholdy. But then they literally say, "Okay, you have enough. Here, throw you into the deep end.
Because that's the only way you learn to swim. You gotta take the train wheels off the bike and go.
No,
and
you need at least. I'll tell you why I like reading adventures, even though I don't run 99% of the adventures I read. Because I just like to see how people structure them. So if I do an adventure, I can use a similar structure. So I would say, and I'm not saying adventure pass. I don't say adventure pass here. Like people are like, oh, they're not going to come up with adventure pass. I was literally thinking a handful of adventures, like one shots. Like
if they did, it would probably be Apocalypse or Blades in the Dark style, where they present fronts and threats and clocks of what people wanted to do. Like the one in the book, there's one about like a mercenary who is like, at this point 8, he has made an evil deal with this other people, and by 0, like there's a full scale war that started between these two areas. So like they probably would present something like that would give you like a synopsis and setup. It would give you what the clocks are, and maybe a dramatis personae of the important NPCs and what their motivations are, and then it would tell you to run it. Like that's that style, and it's even not a style that can't be used in D&D or Pathfinder. Even like the complete villains handbook in AD&D listed out different types of D&D adventures, and one of the ones that they listed were like things like a power matrix or a time matrix that fall in pretty well with Powered by the Apocalypse or Blades in the Dark style synopses. It's just not more of like what they would have called a space matrix, like a dungeon where it's all about going to the next room, or one where it's more
I'm not
railroady.
asking for a dungeon crawl. I'm just asking for an adventure. Something. I'm literally not asking for a dungeon crawl. I'm just asking for something that you can use to help structure.
Then you might like what they've come up with eventually.
Yeah, I mean, they had some one-shots for the beta and stuff like that. Although I do think that even a one-shots are, in my opinion, structured very differently. You know, like one-shots are designed to sort of just like get you in, get you out. It's
that was the other thing.
It's not really an adventure.
Well, they have a section on running one-shots differently than anything else, which I thought was really cool. A lot of games don't have a specific section on what you should do different for one-shot. It is admittedly only a 1-page.
Okay, wait. Let me get to
1-page one-shot.
Okay, well, here's the thing then. Then this game, if they don't come out with adventures and support material, then this game is going to fall under the Avatar.
Right. Well,
cloud.
I made the comparison.
I know you did. Because I've been doing...
Well, no, Avatar has released supplemental material.
I know, but it's too little, too late.
But it's like what Mark was saying about. It's more of like, hey, here's this interesting location full of interesting NPCs, and there's some interesting threats, and here are ways that you might, use them as motivations for your characters. But the thing is so much of these games are character driven, right? The traditional adventuring, style is here's a threat. Now the players have to be reactive and go and deal with it or go and stop it. But the whole idea of this style of play is the players are being proactive and have their own motivations and goals. And how do you possibly structure an adventure for that?
Well, okay. Then that maybe there's an issue with the system, because I've been spending a lot of time recently looking at 2 systems, and that's DCC and Shadow Dark. Because if you go on Gen Con and these other websites and you see how many Shadow Dark. Shadow Dark's been out for 2 years. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of games of Shadow Dark being run at Gen Con. And DCC, I think, is number one. I think it's the number one game. It might be, maybe it's still Pathfinder, but it's right up there. It's like number one and number two. I mean, the amount of games. And that, whether or not, you see, it almost doesn't matter if the game is good, if it has the support. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, is DCC the end all be all? It's a good game. I enjoy it, but I don't know if 1,000 tables being run with that tens of thousands of players is to support this game. But yet it happened. It basically almost manifested itself. It almost became a game in spite of itself because there was so much support for it. And that's what makes it successful. It doesn't matter if the game is good. It really doesn't. It matters that you have a support system underneath the game to bring it up. And by the way, that's why Pathfinder does so well. And D&D succeeded literally in spite of itself, by the way.
So Stephen, your argument is accessibility. And I think that is a very cromulent argument. Like, I wouldn't call the style of play where you like set those things up and, for situations and then the GM figures it out. I wouldn't call it bullshit like you did, but it is actually a fairly high bar to clear, like Derek said. It's something that an inexperienced group might not be ready to handle. Some of them actually aren't. Some of them actually are ready. They have the skills in it. And even playing something like D&D or Pathfinder might actually train them away from that and give them a bad impression that if they started with something more like Daggerheart, they would actually develop sort of good habits. But there are a lot of people who just can't handle that as their first thing.
Not to throw water on your garbage fire, Stephen.
Oh, by the way, I got this too for free. Yay!
Going to GenCon.eventdb.us, which is an aggregator site that does a better job of showing Gen Con events than Gen Con does. There are 1,247 D&D events.
Okay. No, I believe that. I mean, a lot of people.
There are 100.
Okay.
And 30 Avatar Legends, the RPG.
Oh, okay.
There are 113 Dungeon Crawl Classics.
Oh, so it's less than Avatar.
Now, every single Dungeon Crawl Classic game is sold out.
Beyond sold. Yeah, those sell out instantly. Those are gone within a minute.
I would say 30%.
I never get into them.
I would say 30% of the Avatar games are sold out. So,
see,
if anything, so there are more events for Avatar Legends than DCC, but literally every single Dungeon Crawl Classic event, all 130.
I never
How
get
many
into
Shadow
those.
Darks, Derek?
Actually, you know what? I take back. There's one on Thursday at 8 p.m. to midnight. If you want to play in Dungeon Crawl Classics, you can go play that. Shadow Dark has.
While you look, Dire Den sent a super chat. Look at Wargaming. Warhammer 40k is not the best game, but it has the biggest community.
100% true.
Somebody also super chatted up top.
Did I miss them? I'll get it while you're looking up Shadow Dark. Oh, Mark T said, "Where's Roll for Combat Jewel for Daggerheart? I like adventures."
You said I'm never doing an adventure again.
We are doing an adventure. Right, release the Kraken.
Release the Kraken's coming soon. Once we have some more playtests on.
Shadow Dark Shadow Dark only has 70, and every single one is sold out.
Yeah. And there's going to be more. There's going to be
70. At Gen Con, you said Shadow Dark usually has more than that, and much smaller.
Well, that's the official, by the way. And
these are the official in the event listings. If they were doing something else,
yeah.
But I will say, my God in heaven, these are expensive events.
Yeah, well, now they
$20.
Really? For what?
I mean, it's run by Conspiracy of Gamers.
Oh, I don't know who that is.
You do know who that is?
No, I do not know who that is. Well, usually it's $2 per hour.
That's the same. Right. There's a lot of them that are $8, which is the ones run by Lurking Fears.
Yeah. Well, Lurking Fears is the official. So Lurking Fears is the official Shadow Dark.
Yeah, but I mean, here's one. But here's one from Thursday, from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. A 4-hour slot. It's $14. Right. No, I'm saying, but
maybe what that is
you can
supply and demand,
right?
Sure. Where they saw that the official DCC or Shadow Dark were sold out for $8, and they're like, "Wow."
Well, what you're allowed to do
for $20.
What you're allowed to do, by the way, is you submit it, and then you say, "Does this cost extra?" So, like, they take the $2 per hour. But then if you say, yeah, it costs $10 extra, and then they add it on. So then it becomes like a $16
And then you get
event.
to keep the $10.
You get to keep the $10.
Okay.
And that's to usually pay because a lot of these I won't get into the math, but there's like if you go and you're a GM, you can get rooms for free. Like you can get certain benefits if you're going to come run games.
Do you want to know what the number 2? Again, Dungeons & Dragons says 1,250. You know how much what the number 2 game is?
Pathfinder.
Pathfinder.
Of course.
Yes. And you know what number 3 is? It's I'll say it's tied. 3 and 4 are basically tied.
Is it like Call of Cthulhu or something?
Call of Cthulhu is one of them. And the other one is our nearby, our kissing cousin of Pathfinder.
Kissing cousin.
Starfinder.
Oh, Starfinder.
Oh, Starfinder. Good work, Starfinder.
Yeah, Starfinder has basically like 3 less than Call of Cthulhu.
Well, it's the
Well,
launch,
Starfinder,
so people
you know
probably
why?
interested.
Because
No, it's all
Starfinder
it's all
has,
Starfinder Society First Edition. I mean, there is some Second Edition
well,
stuff.
yeah, but also you proving my point because Starfinder has come out with Starfinder Second Edition isn't even out yet, and they already have. I already have adventures for Second Edition sent to me. Like
And
it's
a
like,
hardcover book.
yeah,
But-
but they're coming out with adventures for Second Edition. So when Second Edition comes out, you can hit the ground running with multiple adventures right away.
So I want to address something that Saren in chat is saying, and I think it's a valid statement. I don't think Daggerheart was ever advertised itself as a D&D killer. I'm not sure where that came from. You're missing a
It's
critical
not.
point, Saren. It's not that no one's ever going to kill D&D, not truly. But it's like if you can crack the top 10, you're doing it. But
Yeah.
the real question
I'm
is,
so happy that Steven didn't name this episode that, and he just said instead, and I guess it's take on, not like take out D&D.
but the real question is,
I need to
the real
rename
question
it.
is this. Now. There is going to be some small percentage of people who have never played a role-playing game before and are going to be like, "Oh, Daggerheart's the game for me." But the truth of the matter
I don't think
is,
it's that small.
the truth of the matter is, well, I believe that a lot of the people who would be playing Daggerheart will have to be wooed from D&D.
Well, that's the point. Okay, wait.
So while it may not be killing D&D, the monolithic entity game, you're on an individual basis saying, "Play my game, don't play D&D."
Okay, wait. Let's say I work for Critical Role.
Yes.
And I'm saying, okay, we have millions of Critical Role people who watch Critical Role and know D&D. And some play, but some don't.
Right.
And we'll say the majority don't.
That's
Okay?
probably a fair assessment.
I guarantee that's fair.
Maybe they've played like once,
Right.
you know.
Yeah,
Right.
that's extremely fair.
Yeah,
It's that they play it
either
very
never played
rarely
or they
very
barely played and
rarely.
they don't really
Right.
remember how.
So,
Or like everyone at the booth said, "I played D&D. I played Baldur's Gate 3." That's
Yeah,
what,
exactly.
That's what
Oh, yeah.
oh yeah, we got that a
That's
lot.
it.
We got
That's
that a
what
lot.
everybody said at
So
PAX.
you're like,
Yeah.
I got this. Now, what's my goal? And if I'm working there, I'd be like, okay, my goal is not just to sell this book and sell this role-playing game, but to convert all those people. I mean, this is like they're missing literally a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I mean, this is beyond once in a lifetime. This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity of multiple lifetimes. It's like, okay, you have millions of people who follow Critical Role, who will do whatever they say, all the critters. And then you have a new system made by them. And then you have to figure out how do we not only highlight the system, which they can do by playing it, but that's easy. No, how do you get them to go play the game? So yeah, that's great. There's the book, but where's the adventure, the Vox Machina adventure that you can play? Like that's what I would come out with. I would have come out with
because they want you to be better than that.
You're wrong. You're
They
thinking
want
like
you
a
to be
gamer.
better.
I'm thinking like no. I think I know what you're thinking.
Well, no,
you're
I
thinking.
think Derek is thinking like
You're
the
thinking like
game
a
designers,
gamer,
right?
a designer, and it was like, no, it's open world. You want to make your own? No, wrong.
Derek is thinking like Spencer Stark
Wait,
or
are
someone
you
who would
saying
be
I'm bad
creating
at business?
Daggerheart.
You are
right?
bad at business. I'm like, no, they want to be told what to do. Go to Disney World, okay? Trust me, they want to be told. People do not want nebulous. You can be anything.
Now you
wrong.
No, you're because again at the end of my stream, I did. There's someone even clipped it in our Patreon, and they said, you know, there was a clip for Derek, and I go, but that's not everybody. In fact, that's not most people. I said most people just want to, I don't know, roll dice, get read some box text, and then occasionally be told to level up. I go, that's what most people want out of a gaming experience.
Yes.
Well, then this system is completely anathema to that. Then they designed the wrong system.
You might be right in the sense that, but I think it's still savable if they give them direction, and it could be both. It could be both things. It could be, here's an open world, and yet here's very strict rules and very strict adventures, and they are literally A to B to C to D, and you just go on them and you play them and have fun.
I think Steven's not wrong in that a system like this one, or I would give another example of one that's different but has some similarities in structure. Fabula Ultima is also one that is like at its core very narrative, but then suddenly it has a lot of crunchy stuff that you can do during combat, like very specific character building combinations. You could like go against the adventure design principles of either of those games and make a like very in-depth sort of more railroady handholdy adventure, and then just stick around with that and the base rules of either Daggerheart or Fabula Ultima or any other game like that, and then the more in-depth combat rules, and sort of create what Steven was suggesting. I think it can be done, and I also think it does go against the vision of perhaps the top level vision of the game's designers, but that you could make it even a campaign framework, like in chapter 5. Like if you can change it to you're climbing up a colossus, or you're like hacking a motherboard, or some of those weird campaign frameworks in there, having a framework that is like this is the more this is the less loosey-goosey, but more like, I don't know what the correct word for it is. It would still have narrative to it, but more structured framework for Daggerheart. I think that could
by the
be
way,
done.
we have like 250 people and 37 likes. Do you not have thumbs, people? Come on, give us a like, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz.
Let me just soak it in that my stream was doing better.
Oh well, for now it's climbing. It's climbing.
But I
spread the word. Spread the word. We got to put Derek in this place.
Yes, you by having me on it. I will say though, you have missed the elephant in the room for why this game will probably fail.
What's the elephant, Derek?
You have the box, Steven. So you can pull it out and show the camera why this game will fail.
I already know why. How do I open this?
And it's because people are very triggered, and people are very
the
weird.
Cards?
The cards.
The cards, which are falling all over the place, by the way, which is exactly why you don't have cards.
Okay. Because there is this knee-jerk reaction that people have when they see cards that they go, oh, so what is this? A board game? A baby's game? What is this? Some sort of, what is this, Gloomhaven?
It's like a baby's game.
Like a baby's game. And I was like, I'd hate, like, again, if I take Pathfinder 2 and I were to put, let's say, all of the fighters' feats onto cards, and then when you level up, the GM goes, hey, here are the level 4 feats. Go ahead and pick a feat from the level 4 feats, and you can add it to your, in front of you, so that way you don't have to keep looking it up in the book, and you can just, reference it real easily and quickly when you need it. How is that any different than if it was just written in the book?
Depends on what you're going to do with them.
Right, I'll give that's my point.
Concrete example.
Yeah.
In Eldamon, I legitimately think that putting your powers on cards makes it easier for new players or young players to play those classes, or players who have no idea what a TTRPG is. And I have proof, because I ran for book distributors who barely knew what a tabletop RPG was, and I gave them a fighter, an Eldamon trainer, and 3 elemental avatars. And guess which class they had the most trouble with out of that?
Eldamon trainer.
It was a tie between the fighter and the Eldamon trainer. The elemental avatar classes was by far easier, and I put things on cards. Now, I did that for the fighter as well. I put everything you needed on the cards, but the elemental avatars, because you have your powers, and that when you use them, they either tap them or turn them upside down, and then they brought them back with the refresh. That was so easy for them. They got it. Whereas the fighter had issues deciding like which of their like 2 action strike meta strikes to use and using their reactive strike. But the elemental avatars, it was so easy with those cards. So sometimes if the cards didn't help the fighter very much, but did help the elemental avatar. So if you design your game or your class in a way that's conducive to cards, I think they can be helpful.
I don't understand though. Again, I don't want to insult anybody, but why, like, people like, well, because of cards you can't homebrew. Why not? I'm really missing that. Like, why not?
That's weird. If you assume you need the tactile card and you can't just use a proxy.
Are you like physically incapable of like writing something down on your sheet, or No.
Okay, the card.
Or just taking a note card. If you really want it to be a card, you can just go buy a note card and write it down on that. I don't understand. We've been doing that with D&D forever. We've been doing that since 3rd edition D&D, where we would write down magical items on note cards and I would hand them out to my players. I really don't get, like Dr. How is picking a card different from just picking a spell from the list?
It's
also,
okay.
All the cards that are printed are also in the book. You could go look them up.
Yeah.
So the whole somebody drops a card and you lose it, then you just lost that power.
Not
forever.
only can you print, they're designed to be printed out because they even have like the little marks on them so you can cut them.
So Garhent agreed with what you said before, Derek, about the cards possibly being a deal breaker, saying it will fail because it's cards. Try doing open gaming with cards. Give them to a rando fighter and he drops the game. The cards are gone. Players don't buy books. TMs do. The game will die.
Okay, well, as someone who played it with the cards at Gamma, I will say that's why I felt so much like Gloomhaven. It's because it was nice, though. Here's the crazy part. It's like, everyone's like, I know you say the cards are bad, but when I played it, I had my character sheet there and had little cards. And
You are a sophisticated person who has an open mind and a certain willingness to understand that quality of life is a thing.
It was nice, actually.
But I want to highlight something, though. Most people aren't like that. Most people literally see cards and they go, and they just shut down. And to a further point, Gloomhaven is a very different game. And I'll tell you why. Because Gloomhaven is a card game, okay? This is not a card game. Gloomhaven is a card game because when you take your abilities and then you use them and you put them into a discard pile, you have to randomly shuffle the discard pile. One of your cards gets discarded permanently from the round. You're doing none of that.
Well, they did this.
It is strictly an organizational,
no, you're right. It's an organizational tool, and it's also really good for people. That's, again, why is this game is strange, because it's like this game, you have the cards. So it's very easy to figure out what your powers are. You have a character sheet that literally tells you what everything is. You have a rule book that goes through great lengths to explain how to build and make games and how to actually play the games and how to talk to your players, and it goes through all the basics of role playing. And then they're like, but here's Worlds, just figure it out on your own. I'm like, oh my God, you almost did it. You were right there. You made it almost to the finish line. But then you don't give them even just the most basic of adventures. And even one of the adventures in here, that mother world or whatever, holy crap. I mean, even I was like, that was like over my head. Like the whole thing with the motherboard world where, here's like the construction step for like pronouns and articles and how you write a language. I'm like, okay, that was a little much for me. However, holy crap. The Colossus on the Dryland
one is so cool, right?
Oh my God, the Colossus on the Dryland was incredible. I was like, that is fantastic.
And see, motherboard is not for you; it's for somebody else,
obviously. But holy crap, Colossus! Yeah, we gotta talk, Mark. This is such a good idea. I was like, this, man. I'm taking this idea. This was great.
But again, I do the people in chat, like, I've seen them, I know them, because we owned all of them. We owned all of the Pathfinder 2 spell cards. We also owned all the Pathfinder 2 condition cards, which we also found to be really, really convenient. Like when
I always find those card helpers convenient.
When you get a condition,
play Daggerheart without the cards.
Yeah, you don't need the cards.
No, I know. But what I'm saying is, so what was going on then? Like according to these people, we were playing with cards. Is that
because they think that the cards are necessary to play the game. The cards are not necessary. You can play it exactly the same way you play D&D and
In
Pathfinder.
fact, if you buy the PDF,
cards-
you're not going to get the cards.
Right. The cards are just there. It helps because we were playing.
Tell you, I do not currently have the cards because they did not send me my box.
Well,
But
you're getting
I
it. You're
can,
getting
however,
it.
play Daggerheart. I read it and I think it's cool. I might try to play with Linda one of these days. I don't have any cards. There won't be any cards if we do that. And it still works.
And
just
someone
fine.
actually did we
It would
miss?
make it easier. I'd rather have the cards.
Did we miss
but-
Dr. Metropolis's super chat? How's picking a card different from picking a spell from the list? Can you
I
just
think
write
that
down?
Derek actually read it off in the middle of.
Oh well, in my
one of
little
his
my rant,
rants.
but no, well, because what they do is that when you rest, you can go through your cards, and it's physically. I will say, and you guys know my whole feeling about tactile and like memory and like
I
giving
love it.
people. Exactly. Like having the physical cards and literally saying, oh, let me go through my spells. And I literally take my cards and go through them and physically pick the ones I want and put them down is way more satisfying
So satisfying.
than like going through a list. Like
Yeah,
light
absolutely.
years more satisfying.
Yeah. I mean, again, like,
Genuinely, I want to have like we're doing eventually this Eldamon card game, right?
Yes.
I want to have it not just because it's a card game, but because the names of all the cards are the same powers as the ones my Eldamon and Eldamon trainer can have, and then I will finally have, with graphics or whatever winds up being on it, cards that are not just me writing down on like a note card or having Linda do it because she has better handwriting, the names of the abilities, but like actual physical cards for that. I always
By the
would
way,
rather
someone,
have it. It makes it
I
so
wanna-
much easier to choose your stuff.
I do want to rip on someone. I'm ripping on you. Yeah. Someone said, oh, the cards are just a cheap cash grab. These cards, and I know this for a fact because I talked to Ivan, probably cost more than the book by a significant margin. Okay.
For the Daggerheart people to
For the
make.
Daggerheart. Yeah.
Let's
The
even
cards
say.
are
And how much more does the box that
ridiculously expensive.
contains the cards cost than the book costs?
Well,
Like how much
because-
extra do you have to pay to get the cards?
It's not the cards. Well, the cards physically probably cost way more to print than the
Oh
book.
yeah. So sorry. How much does the consumer pay for the version with the cards versus the
Oh,
version
that I
without?
don't know. That I don't know. But
Because if it's not like way more than double, then they're giving you a bargain on the cards.
I don't know.
Probably.
I don't know. You want to look
Let's
it up
see.
there?
Maybe I can
Or
just
you
look
guys
it
look
up.
it up?
Daggerheart price.
I don't know.
So on Daggerheart,
Ooh,
it
these cards
says
are
here.
nice. Like,
that-
nice cards. Nice. You see the cards? Do you have these cards, Derek? Ooh, they smell good too.
Now,
They
Eric
smell
knows
like
this 'cause-
ink.
Eric knows this because if you use cards, 80% of people will only use what cards are printed. Isn't that also true of like the feats in the book? Like if you're playing PF2 or 5e and they're like, oh, here are the feats that are listed in the book. I'm going to guess way more than 80% of people just go, yeah, we'll just use the feats in the book. And they don't
Not
go,
only that,
I'm going to
here's
make
the
up,
thing.
I'm going to make up a
Okay,
whole new feat.
So
This was
it
this was.
looks like I could only buy it with the cards.
I was actually thinking that. I was gonna. I
Unless
didn't
I
want to
got
say
the
it. I
PDF.
think it only comes with
You
the
have
cards.
to buy it with
Actually,
the
no.
cards.
I'll tell you why. Actually, I do
But
know.
it's a $60
Wait,
book.
I know why. I knew why because when I looked at the Daggerheart book, it doesn't have a ISBN on the back. The UPC code, because I wanted to see how much it cost, and I was like, oh, if it doesn't have a UPC code, then you can't buy this by itself. So you have to buy it.
Yes.
Is this course set? You have to buy
It is a
'cause there's the
$60
UPC
course
code.
set that has a 366-page book along with 279 cards, which
Yeah,
is
it's $59.99.
deal.
$59.99.
That's not a cash grab.
Holy
Like,
crap! Is that a
listen to
good
me.
deal?
If you have,
oh my god!
if you have the Critical Role name on your book,
ridiculous.
especially, and you did all the work of
They
making
could
a
have
new
sold
rule
this for
set,
$99.
you could easily
99.
sell $59.99 or more for just a 366-page
Yeah,
book.
they could have sold
clearly did
this-
not add the cards just
I
to
know.
try to cash grab.
No,
By the
this
way,
is such not a cash grab. It's
I also want to point out
ridiculous.
that when Warhammer 3rd Edition first came out, it only was available as this big box, which came with all these dice
Mm-hmm.
and also came with all of these soft cover things. And yes, all these cards, which are just the powers that are in the book. And you could just use the cards instead to make it easier. They
Sure.
eventually released a very thick 200-page or whatever hardback book that you could just buy individually that didn't have any of the cards because you didn't need them to play. And it didn't have any of the dice because they're like, well, you can just buy a set separately on your own if you want the special custom dice. Because unlike Daggerheart, you need these dice to play a Genesis.
This is how bad this is going to get. Because
wait, hold on. I want to hear Derek's bottom line.
Oh,
What's
my bottom line is Daggerheart will probably eventually just come out with a core book that you can buy separately.
I'm going to tell you why. Let's go through this. So this book, I'm looking at this book. All right. So 366 pages.
Open my
has full color, has gloss print on here, 2 ribbons, stitch bound, color end sheets. So
also, I thought that the book had the appendix with the last 50 pages of cards in it. Now that I know that
it doesn't come with that inside this book.
My PDF did.
The PDF does.
Now that I know that,
so
now that I know that it
366.
doesn't, the book is shorter than I thought.
So this is probably we'll be comfortable. We'll say about 5 to 7. That's $7 to print this book, approximately. Depending how many they print and all that, but the print in China. So
sure.
Now you're gonna have to add 7.5% tariff to this.
And
now,
you also have the shipping,
I'm getting to it. You know what I'm getting to.
Yes.
Let's not get now this with this, the cards with the sleeve with a magnetic shut. This thing is probably like $10. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is like $10. Then you got the sleeve and sleeving this. So we'll say $15 to $17 is what it costs for them to make this. And they're selling it for
more than that, because you didn't even count the sleeve and you already said 7 and then 10.
Okay. So, but, and then the sleeve is maybe like $1.
So it's 16 to 18
we'll
or
say
something
16
like that.
To 18.
But there's also a higher tariff on the things
right.
that aren't the books.
Now, you want to talk about not a mistake, but you want to talk about getting screwed? Guys, I'm telling you right now, if you have any interest in this book, buy it now. Like, seriously, go out and buy it now, because this is going to get tariffed at 30%. Actually, this whole thing. So if you did this book, it would only be 7.5. And by the way, when they printed this, you know what the tariff was? 0.
Oh,
it was 0%. Okay. So when this book was printed and shipped to America, it was 0% tariff. Now, if they sell just this, it's 7.5%. And if they sell this, it's 30%.
30%. Yeah.
So this book is not staying at $59.99. It's impossible.
So let's think about that, though. So it's $18 plus the tariff is going to be an additional $5.40. So that's $23.40.
That doesn't go.
You have to
and I'm just going to say shipping is already in there. I'm going to don't even add shipping.
Everything is already in there.
We'll just add shipping.
Great. And how much do we get to sell this to a distributor for? We sell it directly to a retailer, then it's for half. So that's 30. But they're actually distributing with like Macmillan or something like that. What do you normally sell to the distributor for? 35%. 35%. Right? So $60 times 0.35 is $21. And we just said that they, with the tariffs, are going to be spending probably more than that by a little bit. Maybe slightly less, but probably more. Without the tariffs, they still would have been making razor thin margins.
Yeah, I
think
the
ones they sold through the distributors.
Now, keep in mind, they
might get a lot of direct sales because they have Critical Role Store and other things
and they
that.
also probably printed, like, I'm using low volume sales. Like, I'm doing a volume sales of like what I normally do, which is a couple thousand. If they printed like 50,000, you could probably even cut that in half. Okay, so I would even cut that in half, Mark, if you're doing 50,000. So we'll say maybe 10 to 12 for the whole thing. Okay.
Okay. Well, that is definitely, if they could manage it in 12, including the slipcase, maybe 13. That is definitely
it's better.
That is a better situation for them. At the very least, they're not making a razor thin on distribution before the tariffs. But then after the tariffs, well, there's a reason why you said if you want to get the version that has the cards,
that's what I'm saying. It's like this was all 0. I mean, they went from 0% to now having to pay 30% for this, no matter what. And there's no way around it.
Right.
So, like, and the worst part is because this is slipped together. So if they shipped, this is what you're going to see. And I don't know how they're going to do it. It's like the book and the cards are going to have to be sold separately because the book is tariffed at 7.5 and this is tariffed at 30. But if you combine them, Now
It's all
it's
30.
all 30. That's the
Yes.
magic. So, and what companies are doing is shipping things. And we'll get into all the math because then we can turn it to another another subtopic within a topic. But there are people that are now assembling these in the United States, and there's ways to get around it. But this is for big companies. But like this keeps up, it's going to start becoming a bigger solution here, where they have assembly, or even they do assembly. They'll do assembly in India, and then they'll actually start shipping it from China to India, and then they'll actually mark it as coming from India, and then they'll have a 10% tariff. So there's like all this stuff that you can do, but it really slows down the product. And if this stays out this way, you're going to start seeing that very common. Anyhow, don't get into that. But the point is that not only were the cards not a cash grab, they just could have screwed themselves royally, because the cards are a pain in the ass to print. They're incredibly expensive. I guarantee this costs way more than the book, both in production costs as well as in printing costs. And now they probably have to do it forever for all of their expansions, and it's going to cost a fortune for them to do. So
yeah. And I'm telling you right now, it makes it easier for new players and younger players to play those kind of classes that have those resources, to tell them this is the card. When this thing happens, the card goes away until the next time you rest. Like, that's how the mechanic works. And that's much easier than having them have this like inline list on their character sheet of spell names, and then they erase them or cross them off every time that they cast it. Like, it's just very visual and visceral which things you have when you do it with cards.
Yeah.
Like, that's true for Pathfinder or D&D as well. If you make cards for the spells, not just as informational, but are for like these are the ones I prepared, now it's gone.
It's so funny. Everyone else, it's like, are we going to review the book now? It's like, yeah, we're going to review the book. We didn't review the book at all. We're just talking about the concept of the game.
We're
and
talking
the book.
about, because it's not just a review. You said that the topic of it is also like, how well do we think it's going to do?
I'm actually,
Also, and I would be, remiss if I didn't note, like I say on my first looks, I said, this is not a review. I haven't played the game.
I don't think it's a review at all.
You can't really review it when you haven't played it. But here's the thing.
I don't think it matters. It does and it doesn't. Like, if the game is, let's put it this way, if the game is really bad and just broken and unfinished, I don't think anything would save it. Like,
once it's good enough,
it's
then
more
other
than good
factors
enough.
are what really decide.
Right. That's just like
quite a good game.
It's gorgeous. Like, it is absolutely gorgeous. They obviously went through great lengths to make this a solid, rock solid game. I know for a fact they play tested it. Talking to some of them at Gamma, they very interesting. They play tested it at the lowest and the very highest levels to make sure it worked at level 10 and level 1, and then everything in between they just sort of filled in, which is the right way to do it, by the way. And I do like how it goes to level 10. It's so funny, Derek, like say, you're like, who goes to level 20? Meanwhile, we're playing level 20 right now.
I know.
And they fought a level 22 character, by the way, and he was casting like Wish and Miracle, and they're like, and these guys are freaking out. And then Seth, throughout the whole game, he goes, we're 20th level and we're acting like we're first level.
do you know what one of my favorite, I think I might have told this before, one of my favorite spellcasting moments of all time? I was running a game. It was a Pathfinder Pathfinder 1, and we were at the end of a 20, everyone was 20th level. We've been playing for like 2.5 years, and they were fighting this CR25 MR10 red dragon. So this is a mythic rank 10 ancient red dragon, right? So functionally a CR35 or whatever. And the party members were like level 20, and they were between like mythic ranks 4 to 7, depending on how far. Anyways, I did this thing. The dragon, he had this breath weapon, and I used like a meta breath feat from like Draconomicon or something like that. Anyways, it like hit everybody, did a ton of damage. I think it might have like knocked people out. It stunned people. It was like game over. And then the mage, the 20th level mage, goes, I'm going to cast Mythic Wish. And we're like, what's Mythic Wish? And he goes, Mythic Wish is wish that you can cast while you're stunned. And I was like, really? And he's like, yep. He's like, all I have to do is spend a mythic point. And he's like, so he unparalyzed the party and like healed everybody. So like not to full, but like significantly, and then they like were able to go back on the offensive.
So by the way, Jedi Protector, it was Miracle.
Awesome moment.
Miracle is basically Wish,
It's that you're running an AP that was written before that change. I commented to the comments.
Oh yeah, because like every domain has its own version of Wish, basically. So
in the original core rulebook, they actually got rid of that in the remaster.
Yes.
but the monsters they were fighting were using the original. So
and they were freaking out. Actually, it was a really close fight. These guys are level 20 and they were just getting their asses handed to them, and it was fun, man.
You know what was one of the things that surprised me most about Daggerheart?
What?
It's one of the things that surprised me most about Daggerheart. It only has three conditions.
Yep.
It has hidden. The fact
I was wondering if that's what you were going to say.
Yeah. Okay. The fact that I can remember them is crazy. It's hidden.
Well,
it's restrained, which is
and
basically
vulnerable.
Immobilized, and vulnerable, which basically everybody gets an advantage to attack you.
Hidden is people get disadvantage to attack you.
Yeah. And that's it. Those are the three conditions. That's it. I mean, now there might be very specific like context.
There's actually a ton of other smaller conditions, but they aren't in the conditions chapter, which is I understand why they made that decision.
Right.
And having, made a game that made the other decision for reasons that I think are strong reasons, there's been a lot of criticism of Pathfinder 2nd Edition for having a lot of conditions in the conditions chapter.
There's a lot of conditions in Pathfinder 2.
There's too many conditions.
But Daggerheart has a lot of conditions if you look through everything. They're just kind of hidden in the places where they appear.
He's right. And there's conditions for each class.
The reason why I like having them in one solid place that you can look them up is that way if they're used in multiple places, you know where to find them.
Sure.
But it is true that you make the game look more approachable by hiding the conditions.
That is true.
By the way, the one class that I looked at in detail that I was like, wow, is that good, is the Druid, because they have the beast form options.
Oh yeah, I looked at those. I was wondering if you could use a mythic hybrid creature to be a hybrid of the legendary hybrid creature or not, because that would be funny.
The thing about this feels very board gamey, because it's like, okay, here's your list and it's exactly what each one gives you, and it's just like, here's the list, and you just can become any of these and within the tier.
Why is that board gamey? I mean, there are battle forms in Pathfinder, and you pick from a list of battle forms.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. It's just the way they present it, because keep in mind, they were able to present everything on 4 pages. Like, here's all the forms you can be. And it's very neat and organized, That's what I mean. The thing about Pathfinder, no offense, Mark, is that it's huge.
It's true. Although if you take the battle form spells from the core rulebook, it probably wouldn't take that much more than 4 pages.
I know, but everything always feels like you're reading the book of endless pages from Brandon Sanderson.
You're not wrong.
It just keeps on going.
Well, and that's because you're describing a very different situation. So like if we look at Agile Scout, okay, which is from Daggerheart, which is one of the tier 1 forms that you can choose. And it gives an example of a fox, a mouse, a weasel, right? Something small and tiny. You get advantage on sneaking and trying to, deceive people. You can spend hope to be silent, whatever. The thing is, it doesn't mention anything about how big you are.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of that.
Right?
Yeah.
So
I did notice that.
It is relying on the GM to make a call. So when the player says, "Well, can I sneak through the window?" The GM is like, "I don't know, can you?" And it's like, "Well, the ability doesn't say that you change any size." It's like, "Well, of course I change size. I'm the size of a mouse." And then it is doing. Again, this is why I said this is not. It seems like it should be 101, but it's not for newbie GMs, because newbie GMs are going to have to make a decision.
I know.
How big is a mouse in your campaign? Like, right? Can I sneak? Can I sneak under a door? Can I wiggle my way through with my mouse body? Sure, maybe I can, maybe I can't. So, and that means that every game of Daggerheart is going to be a little bit different. So, in that respect, it actually isn't board gamey. Because board games try to eliminate ambiguity, and they try to eliminate.
That's true.
You're 100% right. What I'm saying is that when it came to the character and the classes and the way it feels like, again, it feels like it feels like it's fighting with itself. It feels like they went for a board gamey, very strict, very segmented, modular game system, and then they also we're trying to go for, and it's super open ended, and you can just do whatever you want, and it's like,
well, I think what they were trying to hit upon, which is something I talked about in my stream, is a pattern of behavior that I've seen from a lot of people. In fact, I've seen it from a lot of people in PF2. One of the things we always talk about PF2 is like, some of the feats that are really restrictive, like the demolitionist feat, which basically says you can only blow up your alchemist flasks if you have this feat, right? And this whole idea of like, are feats permissive or are they actually, restrictive? Do they tell you what you can't do? Anyways, but I've heard a lot of people say, oh, I just let people do this, or I'll make up a rule, or I'll make it take 3 actions instead of 2 actions, or I'll increase the DC, and basically we just play it by ear, except during combat. During combat, rules is written, right? All the rules playing it straight up. And I feel like a lot of people, when they play RPGs, not just Pathfinder 2, basically play 2 different games. They play RPG, the fun freewheeling, and then combat. And it's like they live in 2 different worlds. In fact, the game almost shifts into a completely different mode, literally, when you roll for combat or roll for initiative. And suddenly, it's like the game of make-believe and making stuff up and having fun, that's over. Now, it's grid, baby. Let's go. Who's flanking? Who's shifting? That it's like a very different style of play. And I've been seeing it a lot. And one of the things that people don't like about Dungeon World, when I've played them with Dungeon World, is like a game like Dungeon World or PBTA games, there is no distinction between combat, not combat. The rules are the same everywhere, and the mechanics are the same everywhere. In fact, there is no functional distinction between whether you're in a fight or not. It's all the same.
I will say that one thing.
People don't like that. People like having this like, okay, we can stop role playing, we can stop being creative, and now we can just worry about whittling hit points down. And let's focus on that. Now,
keep in mind, the other thing is when I played, you just went whenever you wanted during combat, which was a little weird. I will say that did cause some analysis paralysis in the group that I was playing with, because I don't know. But you hate initiative, right, Derek? You hate. Yeah, I don't mind initiative, because initiative is a. If you're like me, Derek, and you actually know how to play these games,
yes.
Initiative is more of a state of mind, because you can reorder yourself whenever you want.
Which is one of the reasons I actually hate it the most. Because not only do we have to roll it and then it matters, it also is meaningless, and you can just basically reorder it anyways. In fact, when we
yes and no, but that actually yes, but it does make the monsters. See, if you do it the right way, which is that first you have the computer roll it, so you don't have to ever look at it or do it ever again. Yeah, that's the first thing. Well, I tell you, that does make things way faster. I completely agree. Rolling it, going around the table, get everyone's name, a number, putting it in. That is a game killer.
So Derek, do you hate slow initiative rolls, or do you hate having an initiative system?
I think he hates having an initiative system, period.
I kind of hate everything associated with it, but yes, I hate the process of rolling it. I hate the process of sorting it. I hate how it makes the game seem very like it's almost like you're playing Final Fantasy Tactics and everyone's just kind of like standing in place while like people are moving around. Tactics. I do too, as a video game. I don't like that you very freely and easily change it. I don't like whatever they call it now, delay, focus, or whatever they call it now.
But you can only do it to a point, because then the monsters will go, which I like that.
So Derek, what is your ideal? Is it Daggerheart, where just everybody does whatever they want until the GM does something? Including Bob, the spotlight hog, doing it 10 times, and you say, Bob, please don't do it 10 times.
Outside of no initiative system, I think my favorite's probably like Fabula Ultima. I like a you go, we go, I go.
I do like that.
Well, when I play,
that's an initiative system, Derek.
It is. Yeah. No, I said if I had to pick one, that's the one I like. Then to be clear, Ema's original initiative system I disliked, and I was very critical of it to him, and he was like, yeah, man, maybe you're right. And then he changed it to just PCs go, you go, PCs go, GM goes, PC go, GM go, PC go, GM.
Well, when I played my version of Daggerheart, the guy had that you can go whenever you want, but everyone had to go once before they can go again.
And they have a sidebar now. I'm going to give them a lot of credit for this, because I do not like the idea of it being unrestricted and just be polite to each other and maybe we'll have the other person go, because not only I've run for a lot of different pickup tables, just hundreds of various games, mostly D&D style games. So admittedly not this system. You're not always going to have harmony at your table. And even if you do, the tables I've had that with the most harmony are so harmonious that they would figure out what the optimal strategy was. And even if that was Derek always acting until something bad happened, and then Steven would recover from the bad thing and then pass it back to Derek, always acting. And I would never do anything unless one of my countermeasures that I had prepared for came up, and then I'd pass it to Derek or whatever, right? So I'm very going to give them credit for putting in that sidebar that's similar to what you did, Steven. Although honestly, it sounds like they were even more restrictive than the sidebar with you. The sidebar said that basically until everyone has acted 3 times, no one can act more than 3 times. So if they were saying everyone can act only at most once,
Well, keep in mind,
I like it more in some ways.
This was a gamma and it was a demo, so I think they were also making
That's
sure
fair.
everyone had a chance to
Make sure.
try
That's
it.
probably true. But
Yeah.
what even just the everybody has to act 3 times before somebody can act more than 3 times, I think is great. Because that, yes, it means if we figured out Derek has some combo with the Fury where he never rolls with fear, we can have him start the fight by acting 3 times, but then we have to use Mark and Steven.
We have to use Mark and Steven's shitty characters before.
Yeah, we have to use our awful characters
What?
before
You
you
guys
can
are
go
gonna
back
roll.
to
You
Derek.
guys are gonna roll with all this fear, and you're gonna give the GM all this turns.
Yes, it'll be a disaster.
Have you played with me, Derek? You know that never happens, right?
Yeah, I
mean, that's
know.
true. You are
In
incapable of
reality,
rolling.
Steven will just only roll criticals.
I'm not even kidding you. So we were at PAX and we had this dice tower to roll dice. If you rolled that 20, you got a special prize, but otherwise you just got a sticker. And Steven, we're testing it out, and Steven literally dropped. It's like literally the first die roll of the entire convention. Steven drops a dice in the dice tower, D20, and he rolls a 20. It's like you couldn't even script this. It was like so perfect.
And then you were like, God damn it. And then you rolled and you got like a 4.
Yeah, I got like a 2 or 4. No, Smendon, actually, one of the things I liked, I appreciated as a PBTA GM was that they introduced this ability for the fear meta currency to sort of interrupt those sort of chaining off events.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Because, in PBTA games, if the players don't roll, if they go on an extended period of rolling 10s or higher, as a GM, you could obviously cheat, but you're not really supposed to. You're supposed to follow the principles and agenda of the game. And I'm not supposed to be making hard moves if you're not rolling 6 minuses. So if you roll 10 hires constantly, I might still be making moves because you're looking, me to find out what happens next. But those are going to be very soft moves. That's very different than the monsters say coming in and attacking you. So
Yeah,
that's
right.
where having that fear meta currency, essentially, and the players are aware of that. So it feels like it's more on an even balance, which I actually really like.
That's right. But
So-
I think Smedden may have been responding to me about that. We just have Derek who never can roll with fear, act every time if there's no limitation. The problem with the fact that, yes, the GM can spend fear to try to interrupt it. But if you have a meta at your table where Derek's character never spends fear, and there is an ability, it costs 2 hope, but since you then never roll with fear, you will gain 2 hope so that you can reapply it every time you need to switch targets. Then you are squeezing the GM out of fear even to get to go. And if you look at the creatures, they need to spend fear to do all of their best moves. You need to have fear for various other things. So it's not like it's an unbeatable strategy that doesn't let the enemy team even act and you just automatically win. Oh no, it could even lead to still having challenging fights, but it also squeezes the GM out of fear during those challenging fights, so they won't have them for the in-between fights as much, or they won't even have them as much for that fight. So it's a superior tactical or strategic play to letting Mark roll. Let's say Steven he cheats the odds. He doesn't literally cheat, but he cheats the odds and always rolls with not fear anyway, because that's just his dice luck. But allowing Mark with his crappy rolls to roll and give the GM more fear is just tactically worse. So putting in that limitation is nice because then Mark can allow himself to take a turn. Because normally, if we had that setup where Derek was playing this Fury character and couldn't roll without fear, it wouldn't be that Derek would be a dominating player. In fact, what I know of Derek as a GM and as a player, he would try to find ways to spotlight me and set me up to go, but then I would self-censor myself. I'd be like, no, you know what? You can't possibly roll with fear, but I have over a 50% chance of rolling with fear, unless you fail the check. But Derek, you have a high chance to roll and to hit this guy. It's like less than 5% that the enemy will go, and it's more than 50 that they'll go after me. Keep going, Derek. Keep going. I would self-censor.
So I think there's 2 things to keep in mind here. Okay, right? Remember, you're playing a game where if your character dies, I'm talking about Daggerheart here. You go, GM, I'm going to choose to not die, and they have to agree to that. So the concept of like the game being this like tactical challenge between the players and the GM and who's going to win and who gets the most advantage, it doesn't exist. Like,
well, no, but that's why they put in the sidebar that says if you like to play it more tactically, then use the sidebar, and that's why I appreciate it, because most groups aren't going to need that.
Right.
My group will, because they like playing tactically.
Right. Yeah, I'm just saying that fundamentally, in my opinion, the game is not trying to. I mean, they put in the sidebar, but I don't really think the game is trying to be tactical. I think the game is more trying to create cool combat moments that is, more about cool little story moments rather than being like a legitimately difficult game to solve.
But if it has this much crunch to it, and there are this many tactical things that you can do, then some number of players are going to enjoy trying to pull off tactical combos. They even have cool combo moves that you can literally do.
So someone asked the question, which is funny because that's what I was about to say. They asked, what do we think of the Ancestries? And I've saw some people who actually didn't like the game because they felt there was like too much of a mishmash of like, because you have like the Clank, which is like mechanical guy, and then you have Drakhar, the dragon ones, and then you have a dwarf and an elf and a fairy and a fawn. And
I mean, can you imagine somebody making a bunch of weird ancestries and putting them in a book?
Ancestries. You got like a guy who's made out of mushrooms, a goblin, a giant,
I remind you,
human halfling. They are all over the place.
Need I remind you that in our current Pathfinder 2 game, I am
and if
playing...
you two want to play a dungeon, you too can pick up Battlezoo Ancestries classy creatures.
My party is a four-armed. My party is a half-dead four-armed alien, a android, a living dungeon who is a museum, a intelligent floating magical item that is animated, and me, who is a slime, but I am repurposed, or I'm reflavored skinned as a nanobot swarm. So that's my party. So I mean, by that standard, playing a frog lock is not really that crazy.
You see, I don't know. People always say, "Oh, I don't want to be goofy." I'm like, "Yes, you do. Yes, you do. I know for a fact."
Some people don't.
Yeah.
Like some people like them. I showed the picture of the frog to Ancestry in Daggerheart to Linda right before I went to go to this show, and she liked the little frog guy.
I mean, I did say that the Ancestries are, to me, they're mostly costumes. There's not a lot of there's not a lot of bite there. It's mostly
you get
about,
like two abilities, right?
It's
like
that's
makes it very easy to homebrew them.
It's like what you look like. Because I mean, like in my mind, the way that people play these Ancestries is the way that basically they're like, you're a frog person, but you basically just act like a normal frog. You just act like a normal person. You go to work and you come home to your wife and your kids and, but you're just a frog person. Like nobody really thinks about how like your life would be substantially different. It's like everybody's just kind of the same. You just look different, which is a very nice, like, makes me feel warm inside.
I can't think of any other game other than Pathfinder who goes all in on the Ancestries. Like they are...
You mean like having the longer sections, and
not just longer sections, but they play completely different. Like choosing an ancestry is as important as choosing your class, if not more so. Because
what I'm trying to say is,
it is. I will tell you, as one of the designers of the games, that you were wrong.
Well, I was going to say, but you can change your class, but you can't change your ancestry.
It is less important than changing your class by intention. And that's why we made the ancestry feats less powerful than the class feats, even though you get fewer of them. However, we wanted it to be very important. Don't get me wrong.
But
fair enough.
I guess what I'm saying is like compare that to a game like Burning Wheel or Torchbearer, where if you're an elf, your character literally has this mechanic of grief. And the longer you spend amongst these short-term people, like it starts to literally weigh your soul down, and you start to become obsessed with the idea of leaving the human lands and traveling across the sea. And the very nature of your existence is one of ancient memory, and you've lived for so long that it can be difficult to even remember your own past. And it defines who you are, not just in a fictional way, but in like a very mechanical way. And it really does have a substantial outsized impact on how the game plays. In my opinion, most ancestries today are more of a costume. It's a human underneath. Just, they look a little different on the outside. Maybe they got 4 arms, but fundamentally they function the same way as everybody else, because we don't want to like pigeonhole someone into having to do the certain thing a certain way.
Well, also, it's just the amount of work. I mean, this is the thing. Like, if you have to come up with, okay, first you have the class. So classes always have to come up with unique mechanics. But then you're sitting here designing the game and you're like, okay, do we really want to come up with unique mechanics for every single ancestry as well? Because not only will that take up a ton of pages in the book and require more art, but it's a lot of work. And looks like everyone said no. They're pretty much, everyone agreed. Nope, don't want to do that. It's too much work. Except for Pathfinder. They're the only ones who did it. Thank God. Because that's my favorite part. It's like, I love the different, because, you know, classes are really, really hard to do. And they're kind of pigeonholed. And ancestries are much easier to do, and you can mix and match them, and you know, and
just
some
to
people
do a lot of lore in ancestries too. Like to avoid the pitfall Derek was describing, lore is very important because you want to get a sense of what it feels like,
right?
To be that ancestry.
And then that helps you even with your role playing. I mean, my guys, and we make fun of my guys because they love combat, but they really role play their characters. And they're different. Like, you know, one guy's a bird person, Tengu. One of them is a goblin, and we always make fun of him. Like, they were in a sewer, and he had to roll a fortitude save. He rolled a 50 in critical success. And I'm like, yeah, it's just like Mom used to make. He's like, that's right. When I was back home in a goblin, and, you know, they're having fun. And I was like, yeah, that's a nice little thing. They're always having fun with their ancestries, and it's nice, you know? And it's just, I think it's a big missed opportunity that a lot of these games are just missing out on. They're making it just like a skin that you said. By the way, Agile Monk.
Yeah, just sent a super chat. Agile Monk said that Agile Monk has the large special edition Daggerheart box set. And Agile Monk's initial review is a game designed by Matt Mercer and Brennan Lee Mulligan type GMs for critters to believe they have something unique, but is not new GM friendly. That's Agile Monk's first look on it.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that.
Yeah, I kind of agree too.
I do think it's not as new GM friendly as it probably thinks it is.
Right,
it has really well written chapters to try to teach that game style to GMs.
I said at the end of my review, I said this might be one of the most sort of player and GM advice filled books I've read ever. I mean,
that's what I said. I couldn't believe it. It's like
it is full. It is full of like. But I'm telling you, as someone who has been playing PBTA games for almost 20 years, nobody gets it. I say that, and I really mean it. Nobody gets it, and I don't mean that in like a disparaging way. I just mean like you need a lot of reps, and you need to see it played, and you need to really. You just need to get it.
That's the way that basically we're cycling back to what we said earlier. With what you just said there, Derek, which is that make or break, if Critical Role embraces it, that gives them the reps, that gives them seeing it played, that gives the familiarity that can help people at least be more likely to be able to get into it, right? It's not even just the advertising, it's even just the mechanical understanding of it, that having Critical Role embrace the system would seriously help it from that regard.
We got 100 likes. That means Derek has to sing something.
No.
Yes.
Actually, by the way, just FYI, I do have a hard stop at 5 because
racquetball.
Let's hear. Sing the Eldamon song.
I want to be the very best, like everybody else. To level up is my true test. To gain them is my cause. I will venture across the paths, searching far and wide. To help these Eldamon to understand the feats and powers inside. Eldamon, gotta catch them all. All right, that's the first one.
All right, there you go. All right, everyone.
You're getting a little heart show there.
I'm playing at Eldamon right now.
I know, and you love it.
Jimmy said, "No offense, Derek, but thankful for mute." All right,
no, that's fair, Jimmy.
That's very fair.
That's fair. Davin Perry said, I remember in 3035, the Ancestries were extremely elaborate, including race splat books like Heroes of High Favor by Bad Axe Games. GM reps are vital. Like, and there are game systems where the Ancestry is like everything, right? Like in World of Darkness, basically, The entire book that you got was like vampire or werewolf
Fabula
or something,
Ultima,
and
that's
that was
pretty
it.
important, right?
No, Fabula Ultima has no ancestry identity.
Oh, wait, I'm thinking of the classes. Wait, maybe I'm thinking of Break.
Yeah, it's the classes.
Break,
the classes
I think,
are very crunchy and
no,
Fabula Ultima,
Break
but there's
has
no
them.
ancestry stuff.
I know
Yeah,
Break
none.
is the one that has the
You
big
just make me-
ancestries.
I think Break has a lot of stuff, but like
Yeah.
also like I mean,
Yeah, Break
I mean,
does.
now we're talking about ancestors, but contrast that, like for example, with our Torchbearer game, we have an elf, and the way that Torchbearer works, you have a score called Nature, and Nature represents how much like your ancestry your character is behaving, and if your Nature gets too high, your character actually has to crit and retire from the game because they're no longer an adventurer. They have kind of become almost like a normie, they've kind of retired and they've become a normal person.
They become a living stereotype.
Yeah, they become a living stereotype. And Bob is playing an elf whose nature is 6, and he's been using his nature a lot. And in that game, when you use a stat a lot, it levels up automatically. So when that means Bob is in danger, basically they're going through this elven dungeon, and Bob keeps using his remembering trait from his elven. His mind is going back through the centuries and the millennium and remembering all of the things for elven. It's almost like in mechanic terms, he's about to go to nature 7. But in the fiction, it's almost like being here has brought up all this wellspring of ancient grief, and his character almost can't bear it anymore and may have to physically retire.
Is there a way to lower your nature score by just being a dwarf and being like, I refuse to drink alcohol, I hate crafting, and I always live on the surface?
So the way that you can make your nature go down is by using your nature as a resource to do things that are not elf-like. And that can make paradoxically though, if your nature goes too low to 0, then your character also has to retire because you become a weirdo that lives in the woods. Like you're now so strange you don't fit anywhere into society.
Hold on, what if your ancestry is an ancestry made up of weirdos who live in the woods? Does that mean that you become a weirdo who lives in the woods on either end of the spectrum?
No, then you're a weirdo that lives in the city.
You leave and go to town. Yeah, that's
right. You're a weirdo that lives in the city. You do the opposite.
I think elves kind of are weirdos who live in the woods.
That is kind of true. But
much like Derek.
Yes, I did. I am a weirdo, and I did live in the woods.
That's right. Why elf is one of the few ancestries Derek is okay with.
I am okay. I am. Okay
Derek is an elf. If we had to choose an ancestry, I would choose elf.
I mean, I'm definitely not a maybe.
Oh, dude, you're always quoting. You're quoting like lore, like Tolkien lore, like exactly as written. You live in the woods. You're always like, oh, you think this is rough? Let me tell you the time where I have my boots, and instead of making sure that they stay dry the whole day, I would just jump in a puddle and make them wet right away, because then I wouldn't have to worry about getting them wet later. You're such an outdoorsy guy.
Which of the ancestries would have a 6-hour-long stream? Like if it wasn't an ent, it probably would be an elf.
It would be an elf. Because to them, 6 hours is like 5 minutes.
Well, because we could just talk about the Silmarillion, and that would fill up many. And
that also makes you an elf because you know the Silmarillion.
Even elder races get tired of waiting.
Yeah. No, I could see myself being an elf. There's some gnomish traits there as well.
What would Mark be? Mark, what would you be?
What would I be? I don't know.
What is Mark?
A gnome?
Human.
I'm definitely not a gnome. If I was a Pathfinder gnome, I'd be dead.
Yes, that's true.
So, by the way, the Hollow, I'm well ahead of you. Hollow said, speaking to my Eldamon thing, he said, Derek, time to quit your job and make music. And I said, good. I'm well ahead of you, buddy. I already lost my job.
You've already done step 1.
Step one's done. Step 2, coming next.
Step 3, profit.
Bleaching Mark. That would be funny.
Yeah, a bleachling. The gnomes who survive the bleaching.
I
Yes.
will say this. Generally speaking, I don't really like gnomes, but I do think Pathfinder gnomes are pretty cool.
I think Pathfinder gnomes are cool.
Yeah, 4E gnomes are pretty cool too, but the Pathfinder gnome, the whole connection to the Fae thing and then the bleaching thing.
Mark would be
really cool.
a human.
Maybe I'm a dungeon.
You're a human. You're just a human. He's just
a dungeon.
Well, actually, though,
you never know.
So in Torchbearer, humans have racial descriptors as well. So elves have singing, remembering, and hiding. Right?
You are an elf. You can sing and remember things really well.
Dwarves have avenging, delving, and avenging grudges, delving, and I don't remember the further one is, but humans is boasting, demanding, and running. So I don't know if that applies for Mark from a Torchbearer perspective.
Boasting, demanding, and running. I don't know. Although it is true that humans upright posture was good for running, so I see why they would do that. But no, I don't know. I don't really avenge. I'm probably of those three. I'm more like an elf as well.
Yes, and then
Because of remembering.
yes. So any thoughts on Daggerheart so far? So under Monarch, the thing is, it's a clever system they put together. It's very, very narrative forward. It uses this hope, fate, fear die to create an emphasis on what I call narrative mechanics, which is to say mechanics in the game that enable the GM or the players to sort of take control of the developing story and twist it or take it in a different way. And you might say, well, GMs could always do that. Yes, they could, by sort of skirting the rules or doing it behind the screen. And not that that's necessarily a bad thing. It's just a way of style of doing it. But this game presents it much more in a Powered by the Apocalypse approach, where it's like, hey, we're all players here. I just happen to have a different role, and we're all collaborating. I don't even have a screen. And so we want to make it kind of fair. In other words, it is, in my opinion, a game. I've said before that people play RPGs for one of three reasons, and you can mix and match. Some people play RPGs because they want to create characters. Now, for some people, that's quite literal. It means they want to go into Path Builder, they want to build feats, they want to build trees. They're like, look at this 20th level build. It's really cool. I found a way to use this really weird really weird item in a really cool way by combining these 5 different classes. Some people really like that. Other people like creating characters from an immersion sense. You know, I built this character, their backstory. I like to think about how they would solve problems or how they would approach it. So some people play RPGs to create characters, build characters. Other people play RPGs to create worlds, right? They're really interested in very expansive lore and geography, and they want things that work right. These are the people who say, like, if continual light is a spell, how come aren't all these cities magically illuminated, right? They get really logical in thinking about it. They almost treat RPGs more like playing SimCity or playing The Sims. It's about simulation, and it's about creating a realistic, breathing world, but it's fantasy, and it's got these cool elements. And then the third type is people who like to create stories. And these are people who really don't care about the details of the world as much, and they don't really necessarily care as much about the details of these characters. But what they want to create is a feeling of adventure. They want to create fun, collaborative stories with their friends. They want to end up creating a tapestry or an arc that is exciting, full of plot points and story beats, and feels like a Hollywood movie or like a well-written book. So those are sort of the three core, I think, motivative reasons that people play RPGs. And there's like sub-reasons, like some people just really like tactical combat and they like miniatures. And I mean, there's other reasons, of course. They really like the art. I mean, there's a little sub-reasons. But I think fundamentally, most people are either attracted to the world, the character, or the story. And I think Daggerheart, first and foremost, is about the story.
So we had another question. Any thoughts for what Darrington should do next to expand the system?
Aside from adventures.
Besides adventures.
Which, I mean, they're already creating more classes, which, okay.
I'm waiting for Derek to answer, because I probably shouldn't answer.
I don't think the game's going to succeed. So, I mean, I'm not ready not because I think it's bad, but I just don't think it's what people want, you know? So, yeah. Let's see. They need more monsters. They need a bestiary. They need probably more of those campaign frameworks. They probably do need to bring in as fast as possible. Like, there isn't a fighter per se. You know, I know that there's one in the beta now or whatever playtest. So they could probably mix and match some different domains, make some new domains to give people even more options. Yeah, I mean, I guess adventures for people who don't want to have to be creative. But again, I find that to be very counterpurpose to the whole point of the game system.
I agree with the people in chat that they need an actual play, although that's not really something Darrington will do so much as Critical Role.
Yeah, I mean, if Critical Role doesn't use Daggerheart for a major campaign, not just a brief multi-shot, I think that's going to be a real hard sell.
They have to do it. In fact, what's the Character Sheet, which is another YouTube channel, it's pretty good, and they did an informal poll of what they should run next, the critters, and it was overwhelming that people said Daggerheart, and then D&D, and then Pathfinder. Pathfinder got 10%. It was funny.
That's not bad, considering that D&D is on there and Daggerheart, their own.
Well, they say go back to your roots and run Pathfinder. That's what it said. It was pretty funny. And But yeah, no, it was something like in the 60s for like Daggerheart and like high 60s. And they were like, yeah, they definitely want them. And people wrote comments like, if this is your system, you got to support it. And, it's not just, I think that's going to make or break it. And I puts them in I think it puts Critical Role in a terrible situation because if they run it, it could tank their channel because people don't want to watch it. They probably don't want to watch it.
Even though 2/3 of the people who took the poll said Daggerheart, that's only 2/3 of the people.
Dude, you don't want to lose a
so
third of your viewers.
They took the poll.
Yeah, right. You don't want to lose 30 of your viewers, even at 5%.
First of all, but then second of all, that's probably only 2/3 of 10% at most who were into it enough to take the poll. The other 90% might be overwhelmingly D&D, and you don't know because they won't take the poll. This is like this is the selection bias problem with surveys that is like disastrously problematic for any of this kind of stuff.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but Campaign 3, and the critters in chat will tell me, Campaign 3 started before the OGL debacle?
Campaign 3 started right around it. Because I don't know how far they shoot ahead of time.
Right.
Yes, everyone's saying because it's hard to say.
It started October 2021.
Okay, so it did start right before. Yep. Okay, but they shoot a couple weeks, months ahead of time. So, so it was before the OGL debacle. But the main thing is that people said, "Look, if this is your system and you're going to put your brand on it, then you better support it, and you have to show your support. And if you won't, then why should we?" And that puts you in a bad situation. It's like you have to drink the Kool-Aid, or like whenever they always have celebrity spokespeople like endorse things. It's like not only do you have to endorse it, and then you have to use it in public, but you can't use the competitors.
Right. I'm not just the president. I'm also a client.
Right. Exactly. You have to. Right. And
But Matt Mercer is listed as a designer of the game. Why wouldn't he use his own game?
Exactly, which is what. But then it makes uncomfortable questions if they don't show it. Then they're going to be then you don't support your own game.
I said earlier, there's going to be factions that want to use it, and there's going to be factions that are afraid not to use D&D, and those are going to be at war. And whoever wins, and by I say at war, that doesn't mean they're fighting. That doesn't even mean they're necessarily having angry or heated arguments. They might be very friendly and in their debate with each other, but one of those sides is going to win and one of those sides is going to lose. And there's going to be at least a few people on each side, or even some people are conflicted and they have both sides warring in their own head.
Well, they're trying to have it both ways. They're like, they'll do mini campaigns in Daggerheart, and we'll do our main campaign in D&D, which is
whichever one
pretty
is the
much
mini
guarantee they're going to do
is the one that lost, and whichever one is the main campaign is the one that won. Right.
And that's what's going to happen. It's like they'll run it. They already said they are. And,
somebody said, I think I saw real quick on Reddit or Blue Sky that Perkins was at the Daggerheart release.
Or someone said that Crawford was at it.
Or Crawford.
Yeah, I saw that. He can do whatever he wants now. Until his NDA's up. Once the NDA's up, you can.
What if he goes and he runs the campaign?
Well, they also have a non-compete at Wizards, but like most non-competes,
that's what I meant.
Those are always questionable and what you can actually do with them.
They're you don't want to find out because they sue you, but it basically can't prevent someone who literally went to court on this. They can't prevent you from making a living. And not only can they not prevent you from making a living, they can't prevent you from making a living on what you're an expert at. The only exception is if they give you severance, or if they give you some money, then they can do it, because they can say, okay, you can't work in this industry for 2 years, but we're giving you 2-year severance. There you go. That works because they're basically paying you not to work. But they can't say, oh, you can't work in this industry for this many years in any way, shape, or form, and we're not paying you anything. Well, no, they can't do that. But they can still hold you under NDA. So it's like, yes, I can go to Paizo and I can work at Paizo, but I'm still bound by NDA and cannot say any WoTC secrets. But unless they're actually paying you, no, they can't prevent you from working. As my lawyer said, that's called slavery, and they can't do that. So
Last Czar, I don't really prefer any actual plays, but I've heard Glass Cannon, and I prefer it over Critical Role as well. But that's just because Glass Cannon to me is a lot more like, loosey goosey, like,
well, they were
folks
the
just sitting around the
funniest
table
'cause
playing. They're more funny.
they
And like
also
Critical,
don't know that. Well, back when I listened to when they're in the beginning, they were the best podcast about Pathfinder, and they didn't know any of the rules. they were like so like all over the place, but they were funny. I like them.
But yeah, I mean, my ultimate assessment of the game is I think it's really interesting for someone like me who wants a PBTA style game with a little bit more crunch and a little bit more, buildy elements, with, here's a little bips and boops and little fidgety, flippity, floppity, fidgety bits.
Yeah, I'd be happy to play it, having just read it. I might go out there and play it, but I am worried about newbies.
Yeah, I think
just like both of the rest of you.
Yeah, I think it's going to be tough. I think it's going to be a tough sell because I'm telling you, it's like a high performance car. It looks great around the racetrack, but if you put somebody who doesn't know what they're doing behind it, it's actually a liability.
I'm going to make a joke.
Wow.
But I'm not 100% joking about this. Maybe they should have taken a cue from D&D back in the day in first edition, done basic and advanced Daggerheart. And advanced Daggerheart can be the one that they actually put out that they want people to play. And the basic one could be one that is more hand-holdy.
No, you know what they need to come out with? They need to come out with a starter set. That's what they need to come out with.
Yes. Especially if the starter set was a curated experience that was more hand-holdy. And then they're like, now that you've gone through the starter set, you can just
starter sets are always the best sellers after the core rules. It's always number 2. So they need a starter set. And if they don't, I mean, everyone, it almost seems like all these games do the same thing. They come out with the game, they wait to make sure it's successful, and then they do the starter set. Sure. No, it's true, because starter sets are really, Mark knows, they're really hard to make, and
they're very hard to make, having worked on the Pathfinder beginner box.
Very, very hard to make, and they make no money. Like they're literally
they might even lose a little bit of money, but
leaders.
The idea is that every sale has a decent chance that it's created a customer, and since you're not D&D, your number of players that are playing your game is very important to you.
Again, if you want to see a starter set done extremely well, you got to go check out Dragonbane by Free League. It's very nice.
Yeah. No, the Dragonbane one. I mean, I still say the Pathfinder one and the Starfinder one are the Dragonbane game
it gives you the whole rules.
Yeah, that is pretty wild. That you get all the rules in it. That is true. Pretty cool.
Dragonbane is pretty cool, but it's a roll under system, and I hate roll under systems. So.
Did you not make strength checks or dexterity checks in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons ever?
He hated it every minute.
I remember I texted you when I was playing Daggerheart. Remember that? And I rolled like 36.
Dragonbane.
Sorry. And I was playing I rolled 3 16s in a row. And I was like, damn it. And my high dice rolling.
You're like, my luck has finally fucked me.
Pretty much.
Atrinda, the Dragonbane box set contains the entire rules. It contains 6 or 7 pre-generated characters. It contains a campaign map. It contains some battle maps. It contains figures and stands. It has a dice check or a dice set. And it also has something else that I'm missing.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. All their box sets are insane. Like anything from Free League. You think that box set's good? You should see the what is it? I'm blanking.
Blade Runner,
Aliens. Blade Runner. I was looking for it. Blade Runner. Oh my God, the Blade Runner box set is ridiculous.
Oh, yeah, and Kick It. I'm sorry. It has the entire Misty Vale campaign, which literally has like 8 or 9 adventures in it. So you don't get an adventure, you get a full campaign, and it all comes in their one box set, which is like $40 or $50 or something.
The other one that's really good is the Warhammer Fantasy.
I picked up a cloth map of the Misty Vale.
And who got you a discount, buddy?
That would be Mr. Stephen Glicker from Roll for Combat. I got this at PAX.
I can confirm that those two left me alone to handle the entire booth so that Steven could finagle a discount for Derek. So I was there when that happened.
I was there.
At the same
and he was like, I was like, oh no, I can't handle it. It's too much. By the
I
way,
didn't say that, but you saw me.
I
was,
know, I
Like,
saw
climbing
you-
over
you were
everything
like,
so that I
"Yikes."
could try to do the point of
I
sale while
know, I
reaching over and
know.
handing over the dice to
I ran
people, then
over as
talking about
quickly
the
as
books.
possible. I ran over. So, real quick. So, we only got 5 minutes left. We will all be at Gen Con, and we will all be working the booth. I got Derek to work the booth at Gen Con because I got him an exhibitor badge, which he liked quite a bit, and a parking space.
Right,
There you go.
That's the real money.
I know.
So
yeah.
is Derek going to be there a lot, or is he going to be a rare find?
No, basically,
I'm going to be a flex position.
he's going to be flex. He's going to be flex.
Linda is also going to be flex. So
And
if you
Linda
get
will
really
also be
lucky,
flex.
one person at PAX East, because Linda was not even really that flex. She was just helping a
Although
little
she
at the beginning
she
and
did
the
help
end.
a lot.
Oh, no, she was
Came a few
great.
times, but one person managed to get Linda's signature on their Jewel of the Indigo Isles
Mhm.
because they were very perceptive. And even though I was like, Linda should be around here, but she just left, they came back right before the hall closed because they
Mhm.
figured she would come for teardown, and they got her to do the signature. That was very smart.
And we
of them.
have a booth at Gen Con, and if the booth, and it's going to be fine tuned from what we were doing at PAX East, and
Oh yes.
boy, was our booth busy at PAX East. I think it's going to be mobbed at Gen Con, quite frankly.
That'd
Because
be cool.
I think it's going to be crazy. I think it's good. I think I might have to double everything. 2 dice towers, 2 spinners.
Oh, the whole shebang.
Yeah,
Are we
yeah.
gonna have enough people for that?
We're going to have 6 people.
Even with but we okay. So we have you, me, 2 full-time people, and then Flex Derek and Flex Linda for a little bit. But is that going to be
4.
enough to do 2
I wanna
towers, 2
always have
spinners, and 2
4.
points of sale?
Well, I want to have at least 4 at all times. Well, the spinners, we probably only need 1 spinner. And probably, I think 1 dice tower. And let me tell you, if there's a problem, I don't think we'll have trouble finding another dice tower
You're
at
right.
Gen
But yeah, I
Con
think
and
1 dice
buying
tower,
one.
1 spinner, 2 points of sale.
Yeah.
Because at that point, you've used all 4 of your people, and there's no one left to talk to
Right.
anyone. So you
Fair
might as well
enough.
not have more than that.
No, I'll just have 1. And the dice one quick.
Jedi Protector. No, Mark and Steven are not going to Origins. I will be at Origins.
Yeah, so right. I will not be there because it's the same weekend as my
But
son's
there is
graduation.
a roll for combat booth that is entirely being done by like
Lurking Fears.
Lurking Fears.
So, and
they do a really
our-
good job with stuff, but they obviously don't know our products like Steven and I do, but they'll do the best that they can.
Well, we will be next to Shadow Dark. So we
Isn't it almost the same one?
It's the same booth. The Shadow Dark /
It's a combined
Roll for
Shadow
Combat
Dark
booth.
roll for combat booth.
Because that's how you do business, Derek.
Don't know. I don't know anything about that. Okay.
I think it would have been cool if the Shadow Dark roll for combat books were out while having
I
the shared
know.
booth.
That would be really good, but we're not
I just
done yet.
stream enough that people eventually feel like they owe me something, and then they go, "Here, Derek, out of pity, here's $5."
Yes, that's true.
So, are you saying that Derek, that your fan base is based off of pity and animus?
They definitely don't like me. So yes.
Yikes! They don't like you.
Listen, you got to know your
Everyone
lane.
likes Derek.
I'm a acquired taste. I have a lot of ex-girlfriends who would beg to differ.
True. Oh, you told me a lot of stories. Derek and I spent like every second together for like
too
6
much
days
time.
or something.
Yeah,
It was
like 5
great.
days, and I might come in on Tuesday for Gen Con. So
You are coming on Tuesday. I need you.
all right. Well, like I said, let me
Well,
know.
I'm actually having stuff shipped to your house, so you better come in.
Oh, okay.
Not a lot, just a few things.
We've done that before. That was the Origins.
That's
one
right,
time.
at
But,
Origins. Yes.
But yeah, no, I mean it's a fun time. It's exciting. Like I said, I mean for the most part, I've had a pretty good experience. With the folks, like the Shadow Dark people are really cool, and like they were really nice to me, and then like they were, Kelsey's, she's grade A, so yeah, that's cool. I'm excited. It should be fun. It should be a fun con season. I hope. I mean, again, as I said before, there was this,
Kelsey will be at Origins, by the way.
There were a couple of channels that really, stirred up a lot of animosity about Wizard of the Coast and
who's that?
and the OGL.
Who is that?
There was just a lot of there's just a lot of hate in the atmosphere at the last.
We do it
and
for love. We do it for love.
And we were coming out of COVID still, and there was still a lot of, rightfully so, there was still a lot of concern, and obviously now things are obviously pretty scary, and a lot of people don't have jobs and benefits and stuff like that. But at least from a TTRPG perspective, the industry does seem to be a little bit more calm down.
It
in
actually
terms of,
is.
in terms of there's no actively raging dumpster fires. So
No, they're all
That's
gone.
good.
Well,
That's good.
it's bad for business though.
You saying it's actually good for wizards to have raging dumpster fires constantly?
Good- no, it's good for everyone
business,
else.
It's not
She's
good
like,
for
no,
the.
it's good for everybody
It's
else.
good for
It's not
everyone
good for the
else.
psychological well-being of the creators.
No, definitely not. But
Because
that's
a rising tide lifts all boats, but also when that one big boat sinks and goes completely under, right?
it rises even more tides.
pushes everything else up.
Right. That
actually
is
know
that's how the
that's how
tide rises.
I don't think that's how buoyancy works, but we'll just pretend.
No, that is how buoyancy works. It's
Well, no, 'cause you're already-
displacement.
Yeah, but you're already displacing the mass
No,
of the water.
you're displacing just the bottom, not the full weight.
Right, but you have to displace a weight of water equal to the amount of. So I guess yes,
And
if
the
boat
volume.
sinks.
It's the
Right,
volume. It's not
All
the
right,
weight.
we're not-
It's the
There
volume.
you go.
All right.
Come on, man. Some elf you are.
It's important physics.
Eureka!
I never said I'm more of a Celeborn or an Elrond. I'm not more of a Curdane the shipwright. All right.
There you
Well,
go.
obviously.
That's why we know
even though I've
Steven
owned-
is a dwarf
even though
because
I've
he
owned
understands
sailboats.
the engineering process
That's
of
true.
building these things.
There we go.
Yeah, but I
So-
need high charisma. That's not a
However, Derek is
dwarf.
not just an elf; he's also a racquetball player.
That's right.
And so, since we have the clock has struck 5, and he's turning back into a pumpkin.
Well,
And
do
so-
like, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. Check out.
That's
We
right.
just came out with Battle Dragons. Our last Secret Dragon book came out for Pathfinder.
I'm so excited that
today.
we're done
Thank
with
God.
that.
Well, we still got the
like them
5.
all
We
so
got the
much,
5e
but
version
I'm
to
happy
come out.
because it was supposed to be 1 book, and then we did 4.
Hey man,
So-
but look how good they came out.
They're great. They're so good.
Look, Red Hulk and I finally agree.
Derek Saleshi.
No, he said, let's go back to Thaco. All right, I'm in. Let's go.
I don't mind Thaco.
I don't mind
Thaco.
Wait a
Thaco.
minute,
I
it's a
didn't think so at
roll
all.
under.
No, it's not a roll under.
Oh, no, wait,
No, it's
sorry.
not.
It's
No,
not.
it's not.
Still-
I mean, it's
I-
Thaco. It's a table.
It's
so
a
that's
table.
fair.
All my
They're
tables
both
sit out.
different, though.
No, the whole point of Thaco was that it eliminated the need
Yes.
for the combat matrix.
That's
Yes,
right.
there was a
because you just
table.
look at the Thaco.
You can
Yeah.
just look at the Thaco and
I
subtract the armor
played.
class.
I played
Yes.
thousands of hours of Thaco D&D on the computer. I'm totally fine with Thaco. I have no problem
It
whatsoever.
was definitely an improvement over when you had to do it without Thaco.
Well, I will say this, and I do have to go, but there is something that I think people forget, which is that in the original game, you didn't know what your combat matrix was. That was like a DM thing. And so you actually didn't know what you needed to hit. All you knew is that you wanted to roll well. So there was a little bit more of that like mystery going to it. Thaco sort of brought that back into the, into the player realm a little bit. So
That's fair.
so-
All right, then, everyone. Until next time, if you want to battle the zoo, you have to roll for combat.
I still
Hey,
don't,
everybody.
I still don't know what that means, but
I don't either, but you're telling me to say it, so I do.
yes.